So my name is Soojhai. I'm an environmental science and policy major, and for the last 2 semesters, I've been doing research with Dr. Kitsunoda's research lab. And this lab focuses on examining the impacts of ecological restoration on grasslands here in Central Texas. My specific research is on the impacts of human ecosystem on soil physical and chemical properties here in Texas Hill Country. So this research was conducted at the southern end of the Great Plains. It's a mixed grass prairie. These magnificent grasslands stretch all the way into Canada, but a lot of them have been destroyed, which purposes I'll get to in a moment. And then here we are in Austin at the edge of the Edwards Plateau ecoregion. The Texas Hill Country is at the eastern edge of this Edwards Plateau region. And this region is characterized by shallow soils that lie on top of limestone. Today, the main vegetation types are grasslands, juniper oak woodlands, oak or mesquite savannas, and then a lot of agricultural land, of course. Historically, in Texas, grasslands were full of hundreds of species of native forbs and grasses, as this quote is alluding to. And while we still see some of these grasslands and woodlands today, they were much more common in the past, but a variety of threats have started to degrade these systems. Overgrazing and fire suppression, woody encroachment, development, invasive species, and climate change are some of these threats that are impacting these systems. Overgrazing and fire suppression are main factors that have caused woody encroachment and the spread of invasive species, and climate change is only going to exacerbate these threats. My research has focused on the invasive species aspect because there's evidence that invasive species have started to change landscapes by outcompeting native grasses and other species, decreasing biodiversity, and altering ecosystem functions. This is King Ranch bluestem. You all have definitely seen it growing along pretty much any highway in this region. It's one of the most pervasive invasive grasses here. In the early 1900s, grasslands became overgrazed by livestock, so Texas ranchers introduced different exotic species from other countries that could grow fast since their livestock and their livelihoods depended on it. And one of these grasses was King Ranch bluestem, which came from Asia, and it quickly began to dominate the landscape. And although KR was introduced with a positive intent and it didn't have a practical use, it has now invaded many grasslands throughout central Texas. Previous research has suggested that it's becoming more and more of a problem. This is Commons Ford Metropolitan Park. It's one of my research sites, and the picture on the left is before any restoration occurred, and as you can see, it's covered in a monoculture of King Ranch bluestem as well as some woody encroachment. And then the picture on the right is after restoration. Techniques such as prescribed fires and native seeding were used to manage the land. As you can see, restoration significantly increases biodiversity, and previous research has shown that the diversity of the ecosystem is directly linked to the ecosystem functions. When the types of plants present in an ecosystem start to change, that can change the soil and ecosystem functions. So what exactly are ecosystem services? In short, they are positive benefits that wildlife or ecosystems provide to people, and they can be split into 4 categories, as you can see in this chart. The regulating services are most relevant to this research, as these services will become more crucial as climate change continues to worsen. Important ecosystem services provided by grasslands include nutrient cycling, flood mitigation, carbon storage, and erosion control. When the soil is highly compacted, water is not able to infiltrate down into the soil, which means an area is at higher risk of flooding. As I mentioned, vegetation cover can impact ecosystem functions. So this image shows different prairie grasses and the variety of root depth that there is. And you can imagine that if this was all replaced by a monoculture of one grass, the same root depth, that could impact the functions of the soil as well as other ecosystem services. One way in which a diverse grassland ecosystem can become a monoculture is through a process called facilitation. This is the ability that some plants have to change the soil, making it easier for that species to grow and spread and outcompete natives. The way these plants have the ability to do that is usually by altering soil nutrients or through the microbial community. And this graphic kind of shows that there's one KR and then something happens to the soil and then there's an abundance of KR. So healthy ecosystems are important for ecosystem services and the soils to function properly. And the main service that I focused on for this research was soils, and more specifically, how invasive species might affect these soils. So this led me to ask the question, does Cape blue stem affect soil physical and chemical properties when compared to a native grass? I had two objectives for this research. The first was to determine if restoration of native grasslands affects the physical and chemical properties of soil compared to an unrestored grassland invaded by KR. And the second is to determine whether native and invasive grasses are facilitated or inhibited by growing in their own soil versus soil conditioned by the other. I had two hypotheses, one for each objective. The first was that KR would negatively impact soil physical and chemical properties compared to overstored grassland, and then that KR conditions the soil in a way that makes it easier for it to grow and spread faster than little blue stem, which is a native prairie grass. So there's two parts to my research. So there's the first part was an observational study in the field, and then the second part is an ongoing greenhouse experiment, which I'll get to in a moment. So for this first part, the research was conducted in 3 locations around Austin, Collinsford Metropolitan Park, and then 2 sites at Spicewood Ranch, that would be Cemetery and West Finding. These sites have undergone prescribed ferns and native seeding in some of the plots to aid in restoration, but other plots remain dominated by KR, which makes these locations ideal for this type of research. Each site has 4 plots for a total of 8 plots. There's 4 dominated by KR and then 4 with more native grasses and forbs. I looked at 4 aspects of soil physical and chemical properties: infiltration, compaction, soil organic matter, and soil nutrients. For infiltration, we used a single ring infiltrometer, and we simulated a one-inch rainstorm while timing how long it would take for the water to absorb into the soil. For compaction, we used a pocket penetrometer, and you basically push it into the ground to a certain point and then see the resistance. And then for soil organic matter, we used a process known as loss on ignition to get the percentage of organic matter in the sample. And then to get nutrient data, the soils were sent off to Texas A&M lab. So for my results, this graph is showing infiltration. The blue bars are invaded, and then the green bars are restored plots, and then there's the 3 different locations on the bottom. The data was highly variable. There was no significant differences between the sites or between whether the plot was invaded or restored. And just a side note, more infiltration is good and less infiltration is bad. More infiltration means that the water is able to absorb into the soil. And for compaction, overall, it was an average. It was on average higher at the 2 Spicewood locations, Cemetery and West Winding. But again, there were no significant differences between site or between invaded or restored. And then more compaction is bad and less compaction is good. more compaction means the soil is compacted, so water is not able to infiltrate. For the analysis of the soil chemical properties, there were some statistical differences by site. Again, these are the sites, and that was expected. Although there were some differences by site, there weren't many differences by treatment, although there were some exceptions. We're still not sure why these exceptions might be, but we're looking into it. And then these pictures on the bottom, it's KR and then the native little stem. So for the second part of my research, I conducted a greenhouse experiment in which I germinated KR seeds in KR-dominated soil and little blue stem seeds in soil that has been restored, and then I germinated each in soil that has been conditioned by the other. The soil and seeds for this experiment were collected at Spicewood Cemetery and Spicewood West Winding. This picture is me picking out the seeds and putting them in pots in front of me. There was a total of 6 treatments and 10 pots per treatment. So the pictures on the left are with restored soil and 10 pots of KR seeds, 10 pots have little blue stem seeds, and then 10 have a mixture of both. And then the 3 trays on the right is the same setup, except the soil is from KR-dominated pots instead of native soil pots. These are the preliminary results. These are just showing KR germination. Overall, so far we're seeing that KR has more individuals germinating faster in the KR soil compared to the native soil. There has been no little blue stem germination, so that's why this is only for KR. So for some next steps, I'm going to be continuing this greenhouse experiment, and I'm going to measure the growth of the seedlings over time, as well as the soil chemical properties after that growth has occurred. Overall, there's no evidence that KR affects infiltration and compaction or soil nutrients, but it's important to note that there are other effects of KR not examined in this study, and these are these variables are just part of the story. Considering it covers much of the landscape and there doesn't seem to be too many negative effects, that is a good thing. From the preliminary results of the greenhouse study, there may be some facilitation occurring. It could be due to microbes in the soil or other confounding effects, but it's still ongoing, so we are working to see the results. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Christopher Hart for funding and allowing us to do research on this land at Spicewood, as well as the School of Behavioral and Social Sciences for funding and support. And then a special thanks to Dr. Concilio and Dr. Keith and the lab group for all their helpful fieldwork and feedback, and then my friends for the support they've given me. That's it.
So questions for Maya?
Really nice job, Maya. I'm wondering about your, so the first part of your study, which is the observational study. Why do you think that those Spicewood sites had more compacted soil than on this board? And then why do you think that didn't translate into differences in infiltration?
That's a good question. It could be due to the history of the land use that could impact why compaction was different. The second part of your question.
Why did that? So you saw the differences in soil compaction,
Yes.
but not infiltration. They should be related. Why
Right.
Okay.
It could be, another factor in this is that each each of the 3 sites had different soil types, or the different soil series, so that could be a factor as to why there was so much variation in the data.
Do they see cows at the size of range?
Yes.
With the little blue stem, were you surprised they haven't germinated yet? Or, I mean, like, do you think they're still going to, or are we going to start over?
I am a little bit surprised actually, but we're still working on it, so maybe we'll
If you don't say that, let sweet nothings.
Yeah, I don't know. We collected the seed ourselves.
Yeah.
And,
But you collected this here?
yeah, that's true. KR, I mean, it's not that surprising that KR germinated a lot, right? But yeah, maybe we need to stratify the little blue stem. We tried that. I think that doesn't help either. I think we need to maybe do this experiment a little bit more. The reason why KR is so amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Question about the restoration. So you didn't see the difference between restored and the unrestored pots. How long has that, like, the restoration been? How long was it restored? And do you think if we did the experiment like years later, there might be a difference?
So restoration on these sites have actually, it's been going on for a long time.
Not that long compared to the process, soil process.
Right, but, yeah.
A decade to 2
Yeah.
decades. Not, yeah, so
So
yeah.
it could just be that it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a long time, like in our
Yeah.
science station. It's like-
And the restoration timeline was similar between Spicewood and Common Score.
Common Score was 2010 to 2012 was when it like got going. Spicewood is more variable. It's been in the last 20 to 30 years, different parcels and every store that kind of different rates. I think probably most of yeah. This area where she's working is probably mainly like within the last 20 years.
Similar methods between the two? Was it like a combination of like fire and planting that I?
Yeah, but the fire Common Score is probably hotter because so the fires at Common Score have been like meadow wide, like big areas. And the sites that, did you use that? Oh yeah, cemetery was like the same. Yeah, cemetery field is like a field that's burned every year. The other site, West Wyoming, is patchier, so they're like small patch burns that were then seeded. So the same methods in terms of like burning and seeding. Sorry, Maya, I'm just here. But not, but yeah, the temperature of the fire and like the type of fire that has burned at cemetery and Common Score would be pretty equal.
Okay.
Like they're happening the same frequency, the same methods, but then West Wyoming.
One more question, no answer. So for your sampling of the different sites, I assume they all occurred over a period of time. Do you think like the weather, like how recently it rained, could affect compactness or infiltration rates?
Maybe the infiltration, but I don't think it was that big of a factor.
Well, you do 2 storms.
Yeah.
So you first, like there, so her time, the thing that she's measuring is after it's already been saturated. Like, so you have a storm go through, a storm, and then you do another storm on top of it. So for
if there was-
compaction, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, if
If
there
there
had
had
been
rain and didn't do that.
Okay.
It was a long time ago that we did the infiltration. The infiltration.
Any other questions for Maya? All right, thank you.
Oh. Are we gonna film it? So I'm Maya's advisor. It's been really amazing working with her the last couple of years. She started
semester, and she was global studies, and she was very quiet. And so, and she transferred over, so I didn't really get to know her that well in that class. And then she changed her major to environmental science and policy, but she was more like interested in the social sciences, and she was a history minor. So I kind of thought that she was like going to go in a different direction. And then, but I was her advisor, and she was an honors student, and she came to talk to me to do her contracted course for honors, and she wanted to do it in my environmental chemistry course. So I was giving her all these ideas that were more social sciencey, but still kind of had to do with the topic. Like, you can look at toxins in the environment, from the clothing industry and how they might impact human health or something like that. And then I said, or you could do something more like ecological, that's like biogeochemical cycling. That would also do the class. You could like get out in the field and take some soil measurements. And she was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And then from there, she like just got really into natural resource management, restoration, conservation, and that was the hook, which was awesome. So she started doing that kind of work her junior year, and then volunteered with Dr. O'Keefe and I, our lab group, over the summer, and then really got into the research in the fall. And so yeah, it's been, and now she's like on this new trajectory. She's going to be working with Texas Parks and Wildlife. She worked with Trapper at Wild Basin and for a land management intern. And so she really like embraced the whole like liberal arts, like trying out different things, getting to be well-rounded. She's like an amazing student. It's really awesome having her in my classes. So I was like really, really excited when she decided to do what I do for her research. And so yeah, it's been really wonderful working with her, and I'm excited to see where you go. And yeah, I'm so excited to be working with TPWD. We actually went on a field trip this morning with her new boss. I'm really so, woohoo, yay, Maya! Congratulations. Okay. Oh, can you take pictures?